Hi there, and welcome to another episode. We have a wonderful guest today, and I'm so excited to have a conversation about books with Marina Branigan. I know Marina because of her book club, and I love the fact that she's a fellow bookworm and that she put together a structured group and people and community all around books. And Marina is a lot more than a bookworm. She's an operations and thinking partner for service-based solopreneurs. She helps on making each client feel fully supported in their business, in their journey. And she also helps them create a breathing space to focus on what is really important, both in life and in person. But today I'm so intrigued to talk more about books and book club and where the idea came from. How long have you been toying with the idea? What have you achieved or got from it so far? But I will stop rambling for now and say hi, Marina. How are you? Welcome.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell me, where did the whole idea for a book club came about?
Um, so this book club, I was invited to lots of different book clubs over the years, and I always turned them down. And it wasn't because there was anything wrong with the book clubs, but I was shy and I was wondering, would I be clever enough? Would I be able to read the books? And I always had these doubts about would it be a good fit for me? Because I think with book clubs, in a lot of cases, you don't know what to expect when you join. So for me, setting up my own book club was quite a natural thing. But the background to this particular book club was in February 2023, my mum passed away after a year of a terminal illness. And in those 12 months, she moved in with me and I was her full-time carer. So during that time, my world became very, very small. So it was very much about mom and looking after her needs and making sure she was okay. And then in terms of work, I suppose, really went into maintenance mode with my clients, making sure that they were looked after, but there wasn't really a whole lot of room for anything else. So mom passed away in February 23, and it was probably around May 23 before I kind of started to re-immerse myself in the world. And I found that I was yearning for connection. And I think it was because my world had been made so small in that time. I just wanted to connect with like-minded people. And I was thinking about what's the best way to do this. And there's lots of different ways you can set up communities. And I was really clear that I didn't want a community where I was the expert or the guru who was running this thing. I just wanted to be in with people and talking and chatting and all of that stuff. And then I spotted my bookshelf, which has lots of unread books. And I thought to myself, what if there was a community where we read the books together? And that was, I suppose, how the book club was born. And in June 23, I think there were about 5 people who were kind of in that circle of trust of mine. And I asked them to join, and they joined the book club. And we had one meeting just to make sure everything was okay. And then, based on how that went, we opened it up. And it has grown steadily since then. So we went from 5 members in June 23 to we have about 45 members today. And they're spread across Ireland, France, Spain, Netherlands, Czech Republic, and Greece. And it's just, there's this community now of people who I never would have met otherwise. And people like, so I broadened my network, but so have the members, when everybody is connecting and I know that they're chatting in the book club and outside of the book club. And to me, it's a kind of a real pinch me moment that I started that and that this is how it's gone. So yeah, that's where we are today.
And one thing I do love about your book club is it is really well structured. It's not like overdone with
Mm.
organization, but there is enough organization and there's enough. You do quite a lot in terms of, how you select the books, how you ask people for input, but then get people to vote and communicate with email, and you have Facebook group. And I think, with the growth, there's not only one book club meeting, but there's now two back to back. So everyone has time and space to chat because you then also have a very structured, yet flexible, but very helpful format for how we then break down the books and discuss the books. So could you tell us a little bit more about your thinking of then, okay, I have this book club, I'm setting this up, to think about how you want it to look like and feel like and structure it? Was it immediately clear to you? Is it still evolving?
I think some parts of it were clear at the start, and it's probably the operator in me. I couldn't help myself, but create something that was really structured. And yeah, I think that the structured element of it really supports the members in the sense that people know what to expect. They know, when to expect booking links to come through, when to join sessions, when our book clubs are going to be. And for me, I want to remove as much friction for the members as possible. And I think that the structure does that. It helps them feel really supported in it. Um, so there's the structure of the book club, and then there's also the structure of how we read and how we have our conversations in our book club meetings. So when we started, I had a few questions that we would have gone through in our book club meetings, and then it came to me one night that the questions tied in with the acronym BRAVA, which is my business name. Brava Virtual, be the Brava Business Book Club. And then I thought, this is the Brava method. This is how we read, and this is the framework we use for our book club meetings. So we use B or AVA. So B, we look at our beliefs and biases before we read a book. We look at, how do I feel about this author, about this topic, about this book? Because I think it's really important to have that awareness before you dive into the material. Then as we're reading the book, we look at the relatability of it. So what are those things that I want to take in my highlighter and underline? What are the things that really stand out to me that are striking a chord with me? We also look at A, which is annoyance. And they are the things, what has triggered something in me? What's challenging me? Because I think that's really important. Sometimes we can be annoyed by something in a book because it might be rubbish, but it also might just be triggering something in us because it's awakening a part of ourselves that we were hiding. So it's really important to bring awareness to that. Then after we've read the book, we look at what's the valuable lesson we took from it. So that's the V in Brava. And then finally, it's about action, because there's no point in reading all of these lovely books if we're not going to do anything with what we learned. So we look at what actions we can take to apply the lessons we've learned. So the Brava method is something we use throughout all of our book club meetings. It's, for me, it's broad enough that people can bring their own interpretation of the book through those questions, and yet it's structured enough that it gives us all a framework to work through. And again, it's that thing where people know what to expect when they come into a meeting. They know that they're not going to be, a rabbit in the headlights being asked a question they don't know the answer to. They can speak about the elements of the book that are most important to them. So that's what that framework gives us. And yeah, I think it's a really good thing.
And I think by nature, lots of bookworms or people interested in book clubs and in reading will be more on the introverted spectrum. No judgment to anyone, like no classification. But I think there's more likely to be a bit shyer, a bit more introverted. And then coming with opinions and sharing our opinions could be scary. So then having the structure, knowing it in advance, but also knowing that if I have something to say, I will have dedicated space, that I will not have to jump over someone and try to get a word in, that for every question, there will be a moment when I will be addressed directly. And if I have nothing to say, I have nothing to say. I can just say, agree with what people said. Nothing that pops to mind, that's fine. But if I have things to say, I don't need to be anxious the whole time and worry, well, I have something valuable to say, but all the people are talking, all the people are taking the space. I don't feel like jumping in. So I find this really valuable as, a member, as someone who sometimes finds it hard to jump in. And I can definitely kind of relate to people who would struggle with carving the space for them.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely I would be in that camp, that I'm shy naturally, and I think I have a lot of empathy for people in that situation, and so we have like our rules of engagement for every meeting we have, which is first and foremost, we're about community first and book second. So I always say to people, if you're feeling shy, you could even come along and observe a meeting. It's not so much about the book, it's about being part of the community. The second rule then is that it's confidentiality all the way. So we wouldn't record our sessions. We don't take AI notes or anything like that. And finally, which I think is probably the most important, is that it's a non-judgmental space. And I always say that the way we engage with the book is very much based on our own map of the world and the experience that we've had in our lives. And that's very different to the person beside us. And we really try to hold that non-judgmental space for each other and for ourselves. And I think that really opens up the conversation then for people.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And part of it is it's not just about then the book club meeting, because
Mm,
throughout the month you have co-reads, you have virtual events where people can get together. It's for accountability, but again, it's for the nourishing, I guess, for the sense of community where, it's on a Zoom, you read a book, you're silent, there's not much happening,
yeah.
but you still have the feeling of belonging and sharing this experience. And there's always space for a little bit of a quick, what did you get from it? What it triggered? What was excited to kind of on a smaller scale, kind of warm up almost to both the book and the people and the concept.
Yeah, that's it exactly. So we do every Monday and Wednesday at lunchtime, we do a half an hour of co-reading sessions. So it's a bit like co-working. So you just come along and you read quietly, but we always have 10 minutes beforehand if people want to show up early and connect and chat, or if they just want to read, because I like to kind of hold that space for people who don't want to chat. So you can just join at 1 o'clock if you don't want to chat. But it's gorgeous. And I find that the people who come to the co-reading sessions come again and again and again because they get so much value in terms of carving that time out of their calendar. It's like a meeting in their calendar, so it's a meeting they have to go to. But it's a connection point because a lot of the members are solopreneurs who are running online businesses, who are working from their home or their office, and they don't maybe get to speak to a lot of people during the day. And this gives them regular touch points with people. And they really value it.
I love this. I mean, a fellow bookworm, and you should see the pile of books by my bed of to be read. Don't even mention the bookshelf of books to be read. But how do you choose your books, or what sort of type of books do you only focus on business books, or is there like a variety of books? How do you sort of choose which books you think will be a
Yeah.
good fit?
Yeah. We kind of, I suppose the genres would be business books or personal development books. And I think it's really important to have that personal development piece in it because when you run your own business, that's a personal development journey in itself, right? So it's really important to read books like that as well. So we have a suggestion box in the book club where people are invited to suggest the books we want to cover. And then we take 3 books out of that every month and we put them to a vote. It's really important we do that. For me, it's not up to me which books we read, it's up to the community. And the funny thing is, one of the reasons I wanted to start this book club was to read the books on my bookshelf. I've actually ended up with more books on my bookshelf because all these gorgeous suggestions are coming in from the members every month, and I have to have them. So, but I think putting it up to the vote, having the members invested in the book that we're reading is a really important part of the process. And yeah, it's working really well so far. And it's just such a lovely variety again, because we've got people from different locations, different backgrounds, different people will suggest different types of books. And it's really, there's books I've read that I never have heard of, and probably wouldn't have heard of only for the book club. So yeah, it's great to have that.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, the amount of books I've added to my bookshelf just from doing this podcast and guests, suggesting books or books that they've read that have helped them and they've mentioned it and there's a little notes been taken and a new book has been added to the shelf. So other than the running your book club, what else is it that you do? Because you mentioned the Brava method and that's what you're doing in your business. Can you share a little bit about, what is the Brava method other than the book club Brava method, but what sort of inspired the Brava and, what are you doing with it or how does it sort of guide you in your business?
The Brava method for me is it was born in the book club, so I think it's part of that framework. Other than that, in my business, Lenka mentioned that I suppose I call myself an operations and thinking partner. So I would have started initially. My business is 6 years old, so I would have started as a virtual assistant way back then. But I brought a lot of managerial experience into the role, and I was a qualified teacher and all that stuff. So kind of quite quickly, I realized that what I was doing with the client was going beyond what a virtual assistant would do, which is pure implementation. So I was kind of starting to work with clients to to think about where they wanted to bring their business, and then to bring that sort of operational infrastructure into the business to support their growth. So that's sort of the direction I went in. But I was finding, like, so I would have weekly meetings with my clients, and I was finding that those weekly meetings were probably the most important part of the work, because it wasn't just about operations. The client was showing up as their full selves, you know, with whatever challenges they're facing in their life and their business. And we were having these beautiful conversations about what they were facing and how they take the next step forward. So for me, it was almost like this kind of coaching element was starting to come into the conversations. And I did a coaching course in 2021. It was a short one now, and just to kind of help me support people better and ask better questions and that sort of thing. And at the moment now, I'm back doing a professional coaching diploma. So I'm about halfway through that. And I'm thinking that the business will probably take more of a coaching direction in the future, but we'll see how that goes.
That definitely is something about being a solopreneur and doing your business. The one that you start with is not the one that you end up with, and it has many journeys and twists and turns along the way. So and I think, as you said, a lot is through realizing what you need to learn in order to help your clients, and then you bring in this whole new element and that can help, and then it develops from there, and then just something else. So it's lovely to see how you have sort of developed and grown with your business.
Yeah. I feel really lucky that I'm in that space that supports that growth. I'm not sure I ever really experienced that as an employee. So to have that kind of autonomy over where I go to next and what courses I want to do and how I want to develop is very fulfilling, and has probably made me unemployable. So I kind of need to make this work.
So what made you go from employed to self-employed?
It was always something that was in the back of my mind. So you're in the UK, you're familiar with The Apprentice TV show, and every year, but years ago when it was good, every time it came on, my friend and I would text each other and we'd be like, oh, we're going to set up a business, you know. So we always had this thing in the back of our minds that we wanted to do. But for me, I was in a very comfortable job. I was working in financial services. I was paid well, got good bonuses, and just kind of sat in that space, even though I didn't feel particularly fulfilled. And my dad passed away in 2017, and it sort of awoke something in me, because he worked all of his life and had a very short period of retirement before he died. And I thought to myself, wow, what if that happens to me? What if I stay in this job or a job that doesn't light me up, and that's it? So it awoke this boldness. So I did a start your own business course without having a business idea. I just did it because I kind of trusted sometimes you just need to put yourself in these spaces and then the ideas come. So I did the course, and during the course, somebody mentioned that term virtual assistant. They didn't even mention it to me. It was being said to the person beside me, but my ears kind of pricked up and I thought, I need to look this up. So I went home and looked it up, and did a lot of research, and then set up the business from there. So I was kind of straddling the job in financial services and the business for about a year and a half. And then the financial services company closed. So I didn't even have to make a decision. I was lucky enough. I didn't have to make that decision. I was forced into it, but it was almost like, how do I say this? As soon as the space appeared in my business for clients, the clients came. I sometimes think, for me, every time I've made a shift, the business has shifted in response in a good way, thankfully. And yeah, so it's been quite busy since I went full time, and I'm kind of very lucky that I have a small number of clients who I know deeply and know their businesses really well, and we work really well together, and that's the kind of space that I'm in, and I'm very lucky to be there.
It sounds really great, and it's good timing on your behalf, having already created your business and then your job literally disintegrating through the closure of the company. So as a bookworm and somebody who's created a book club, this is going to be a very obvious question, but it's, come on. It's what book has really guided you, or you can have more than one book, but it's usually one book that or an author that just you go back to time and time again. You find that it gives you the answers for the questions you might not even know that you've got. It's one of those, either an author or book. Which book would you take, or to a desert island if you couldn't have anything else? How's that?
There's a couple actually, and there's a couple from the book club meetings. One of them is the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And it's a funny one because it really divided opinions in the book club. People had a love-hate relationship with it. But I loved it. And I think the reason why it stood out to me so much was it was a big conversation around fear and resistance, and this whole thing that fear or resistance could almost sit separately to you, that it could almost be seen as a separate entity, but you could keep taking action anyway. And that for me was important. Like I would have a lot of self-doubt, and I sometimes can be slow to kind of take chances. I'm quite low risk. So to read something like that for me actually opened the gates for me to create my first online course, for example, because it kind of shifted my mindset. So that was an important one. And one of the other ones from the book club was The Perfection Detox. And I remember somebody telling me before I was a perfectionist, and my response to them was, I'm not a perfectionist, I just have high standards. So I was a perfectionist, I just wasn't aware. And when I read that book, so much of it resonated with me. But there were two key takeaways from The Perfection Detox. One was about swapping expectation for anticipation. So rather than having my sights set on this fixed end goal and being disappointed if I didn't reach it, rather having this kind of fizz of anticipation and experimenting with different things. And for me, that was a huge mindset shift that has enabled me to try different things without the pressure of it having to succeed. And then the other thing in The Perfection Detox, I think it might have been the closing line. I love when a book gives you goosebumps at the end. And this line was, I don't have a word for it. It was, the world needs your imperfect voice, not your perfect silence. And I thought to myself, from over the years, of how many things have I created but not released because I thought it's not good enough. And like, not even for me, but for everybody, that's you're stealing the world of your creations. And yeah, I think that piece of bringing forward your imperfect voice and appreciating that, for me, I value imperfection in other things. I think there's beauty in imperfection in other people, but I think it took that line for me to appreciate it in myself and to appreciate that there was big value in the imperfect things I could bring to the world. Like, the book club isn't perfect, but the thing is, we show up all of the time, we listen to the members, we change and adapt according to our needs. And that for me brings huge growth and learning that you just don't get if you're operating in that space of trying to be perfect all of the time. So yeah, The War of Art and The Perfection Detox will be probably my desert island reads from the book club.
And that is so true, is how many great ideas are sitting somewhere in a folder on a computer or in a notebook somewhere because it's not good enough, or it's not perfect, or I haven't worked out every single scenario or step. And something that one of my coaches over the years has always said to me is, as long as it's good enough, you can always tweak it, fix it, add to it as you grow, as it progresses. And he always, I'm part of his membership, and part of it is somebody will say, oh, well, I haven't finished my website because it's not good enough and it needs more. And he says, but does it work? Yes. Well, then why isn't it live? It works. You can tweak it as you go along, or a course is not good enough. Well, has it got the information in? Yes. So put it out there, because as you said, how much silence is in that perfection, whereas rather have that imperfect voice. I love that idea of what you were saying. And it is, there's this idea that we've got to be perfect, everything's got to be just right and done exactly this way, but yet none of us are absolutely perfect. There's these imperfections within us which make us who we are. And I think that's been over the years not allowed. It's like, oh, don't show that. You've got to be always this perfect human being, which is pretty much impossible. And it's nice that as solopreneurs, I think they're starting to accept that it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay that there might be a spelling mistake because it's an accident, so we can fix it. Or it's not perfect, but it's good enough. So let's just go and embrace it. So thank you for those. And I have a feeling there's going to be a couple more books added to my bookshelf.
I'll send you a list.
But this is what I think the power of a book club is, as you mentioned earlier, you have a bookshelf of books that you intended to read and instead have picked up other books because they've been recommended from members. And this is something that's so powerful, is there's authors out there that we would never have heard of unless somebody's mentioned them, or a book title that we might just skim past because in that moment it might not have grabbed us, but somebody said, oh, I've read it, this is what I got from it. And you're thinking, hang on a minute, maybe I need to go back and relook at something. So it's a really powerful thing that you're doing, is creating the space for people to read, and almost as giving themselves permission to spend that time reading, because reading has become, unless it's a business book and it's specifically for something specific, it's almost like a guilty pleasure in a way, is especially when we've got such busy lives. It's like, oh, I'm going to sit down and read a book. Oh my God, I'm going to sit down. I'm just going to read a book. Oh no, you can't do that. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. Got to email, got a phone, got to cook, got to kids, and that list just comes at you. Whereas just spending that time reading that book, whether it's a personal development, whether it's a spiritual book, whether it's a money book, whether it's a business book, it doesn't matter what book it is, but it's giving yourself that space and that time. So with that rambling that I've done, what are some of the things that you've noticed from your members on how they have helped themselves in a way by giving themselves that time? So it's not necessarily from the book itself, but by giving themselves that permission and that time to read the book. Does that question make sense?
I think so. I think there's the reading the book, and I think that you're in a group and a book is recommended, and you feel this pressure to read the book, to say you've read the book, and you skim through it as fast as you can, and then you say, okay, I read that book, but you may not necessarily have reflected on what you've read. You may not have taken any action on it. You may not even remember what was said. All you can say is, I read that book. And I found that with people a lot. So having that space to reflect, I think, has given people room to think about how they're going to incorporate these learnings into their lives. And also, I think, carving out the time to say, I matter, I'm important enough that I can take this time for me to develop myself, so I can show up as a better business person or a better partner or whatever, that you're investing that time in yourself. I think it does wonders for people's confidence. And also showing up and discussing a book and being brave enough to share your thoughts, because yes, we hold a non-judgmental space, but it also takes a certain amount of courage to come into a room of people and talk about what a book meant to you. Like that's huge for some people. And I think that there's real growth in that. Also, I think that hearing about other people's perspectives of a book is really important. Often in those book club meetings, somebody will talk about something that meant so much to them, and I'll be like, I don't even remember reading that, because that piece didn't stand out to me at the time, something else stood out. But when you hear people speak about how it's impacted them and they kind of bring it to life, you remember it differently. And you might then apply those learnings in a different way to your life. So all of that, I think, is really important. And the connection piece is huge, you know, apart from the books. It's just like the books are the medium that we use to connect, but it's the connection. And as I said, lots of us are working alone, online, don't get to meet people, and now here we are chatting, discussing, networking. There's lots of stories I could tell you, but can't because of confidentiality. But I can see so much growth happening with people. I can see people really blossoming in the book club. And that's probably as much to do with showing up for themselves as it is to do with the content of the books that we're reading.
And a big part of it is the confidentiality. Like you do obviously share, smiley selfies or screenshots on LinkedIn and talk about the summary of the book and share newsletter with some of the takeaways, but it's always no one's being identified, no personal stories being shared, unless it's obviously your story and you want to share it. And I think that really creates a safe space, because books, surprisingly, can be very personal, very triggering, very emotional. And creating a space like that where we can open up and be safe and supported really is the thing that nourishes then the growth, and obviously the attention to action, and making sure that we, the accountability of the group, and that we highlight those actions we want to take, and that we do have the group to support us, and then obviously to share the wins, because sometimes it's the ability to come back to the group, be it on Facebook or in one of the calls, and be like, remember that book? Well, I did that, I implemented it, and this is what happened. I think it's just wonderful to have a space like that.
Yeah, no, we're very lucky. We're very lucky, and that's a product of all of the members. That's not something I created. That's something we created. You can't create a safe space on your own. It's everybody showing up and everybody holding that non-judgmental space and having the conversations. Yeah, it's a lovely place to be.
Well, speaking of the space, kind of the safe space, the co-creation, do you have any vision for the book club? Do you, see it growing or evolving, or, just being as it is helpful to members? Is there anything on your mind?
It's funny because I had a different vision when it started, but actually I think that we've probably kind of hit a sweet spot in terms of numbers at the moment, that kind of 45 to 50 people, because what it does is it means that we're not having lots of people looking to join meetings, that it's manageable in terms of time and resources and all of that sort of thing. The next step for me after that, I have a small membership that people can go into if they want the next stage. And the next stage is things like we've got co-working sessions, and we bring in guest speakers, and we have meditations, mindfulness, all of that sort of stuff. So that space, yeah, that's probably the next stage for people if they wanted more of this kind of experience. But the book club itself, probably not so many big changes for the moment. I think we've recently slow down the speed of the book club. You might have seen that, Lenka, because it was really important. I think I was kind of noticing that people needed to take a breath in between books rather than jumping from one to the next to the next. And I was picking that up from people in the sessions, so I said it, I put it out to them, and it turned out everybody felt like, yes, let's take a breath. So we did that, and even to have the power to be able to do that we're not waiting for somebody else to make that decision, we make that decision for ourselves, was lovely to be able to do. So we do kind of change and adapt according to members' needs. But I suppose, yeah, in terms of the next kind of level of engagement, it's probably the membership, which I set up in January. I think January I launched it with a small kind of group of founding members. So it's called Solopreneurs with Soul. And we closed the doors then, just to kind of give us that. It's a bit like the book club. We kind of wanted to figure out, how does all of this work? How do we put the structure on to support people? And then we'll open it back up again, I think, at the end of April for anyone else that wants to join.
I love that you're taking this slow, intentional, quality over quantity, really see how it works for the handful of people that I have there. It's not about making it the biggest book club ever, making it for us, it is the best book club ever. For some people, it might not be, and it doesn't matter. I would love to ask, are there any lessons that can be then applied to life and business in general that you got from either of those books or running the book club as it is, or setting up the book club? Is there anything that's almost like a transferable skill that you didn't realize that you had or you needed, that getting into the book club was like, wait a minute, this is handy?
Well, I never knew I could create a community. I always knew I could hold that safe space for my one-to-one clients, but I never knew that I could do it on a bigger scale. And again, that would be the introverted, the shy kind of nature. But then I suppose the big learning for me was that you don't have to be this outgoing, extroverted personality for people to want to be in your world. That you show up as yourself and you attract the people who are on that wavelength. And it doesn't have to be the biggest book club. I'm much happier to have the numbers as they are, to know the members, to be connected with the members, to be able to give them the best of me, rather than to keep growing and lose sight of who the people are. Like that doesn't hold value for me. The value is in the connection. So yeah, they're probably my biggest learnings, and also an absolute appreciation for, I have the autonomy to do this. I can create the space that I want. I don't have to follow anybody else's rules.
Yeah, I think that's, being in control and having the ability and do it the way you want, because that's something that, you're creating the book club that you would want to have, and yet paying attention and listening to other people, making sure that it's the book club that we all want to have. And speaking of wants, is there a book, or specifically maybe an author, that, you would obviously love to read or reread, but then speaking of having the membership and taking it to a different level, potentially be able one day to invite as a guest speaker?
Oh, well, we were lucky enough to have one author as a guest speaker. Was it January? Shane Craddock, author of The Inner CEO, joined us. And that was really special, to have this meet the author session, have him come in and join us, and to understand the creative process behind writing a book. Because I think it's very easy to read a book and be critical of it without necessarily understanding the creative process the author went through. So I think it gave us a really profound appreciation for the person behind the book. And other than that, gosh, if I had my choice, if I could bring anybody in, any author, probably Daniel Pink.
Good
Yeah.
books, good reads. Yes.
Yeah, we read When in the book club, and I liked his style. I liked he's clever with words, and he's done his research, and his books are engaging. I think if I could have any author in, it would be himself. So if you can put in a good word, Lenka.
I'll see what I can do. I remember watching an interview with him on The Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. I think he was talking about his latest book, The Power of Regret. And it was really interesting. He's a really good guest. My brain immediately, when I have two dream guests, if I ever had a book club, if I ever had a chance to talk to an author, either Brené Brown, because come on, or it's a very personal, it's Gabor Mate, because I'm obsessed with health and well-being and stuff like that. So it would be, if I had a book club and I had that kind of a book club, those would be my two people. Yeah. How about you, Natalie? Do you have a dream like that?
Well, I'd just say we don't need a book club. We have a podcast. We talk books. So anybody out there, please, put in a good word. I will go with you, Lenka, is Brené Brown. We've often talked about her books, and I think we both read all her books. So Brené Brown, but I'm really fascinated by an author called Greg Braden, but it's much more scientific. So it's not necessarily business or personal development as such as more spiritual and scientific, but I just love the way he writes. I watch a lot of his YouTube videos, and he's a great speaker. He's very knowledgeable in all sorts of things, and it's just nice to listen to his perspective and where he's coming from, because quite often he will bring in the science, but he also brings in his computer brain. He's also he was a computer programmer back in the day, and then he brings in the spiritual. So it's nice the way he connects, technology, science, and spiritual together, and I really enjoy that. So those two. So any of our listeners, please,
I didn't mention Brené Brown, but I have a sign up just over my screen that says, "What would Brené do?" So it's whenever I'm doubting myself, it's about leaning into the old vulnerability.
For a long time, I had a sign that says, whatever gets done or undone by the end of the day, I am enough. Because for me, that lesson of, and it goes back to the book that you were mentioning, the Perfection Detox, the fact that, it's all about, we are enough as we are. There's no need for perfection. So that's definitely one of my quotes in my mind always. Thank you so much, Marina, for being here, for talking to us. Before we wrap up, I would like to ask a final question. What would be a golden nugget? What would be one parting piece of insight or advice that you would give to our listeners? Be it from the books themselves that you've read, be it from the conversations you had with the people, be it from putting the book club together. I'll leave it up to you, but final words of wisdom.
I think it would be, go back to what I mentioned earlier, about showing up as yourself, being yourself, and not leaning into who you think you should be. I've definitely found by being myself, I've attracted the type of people I want to have in my world, and I wouldn't have that any other way. So giving yourself the freedom to show up as yourself in all of your imperfection, I think, is a valuable lesson.
I love that. And if any of our listeners felt your energy and resonated with what you were saying, and they want to, if not joining the book club or if not joining the membership, at least stay in your world, where would be the good place for them to go and find you?
Oh, my website is bravavirtual.ie. You'll find me on LinkedIn, so it's Marina Branigan, or Instagram. You're very welcome to connect. I'm always happy to connect with new people.
And we'll obviously put all those links in the show notes for the podcast. Thank you so much, Marina, for being here and for taking this time to chat books and book clubs and lessons from books. We really appreciate it, as we said, bookworms all the way here. So thank you so much for being here. And a question to our listeners. Is there a book that really impacted your life? Is there a book club that you are part of that really is helping you to implement those lessons from the books you're reading? Let us know. We'd love to hear about if you have a book club or what it is about the books that you're reading that really helped you to change your life, your business, your trajectory. And thank you again for being here, everyone. Thanks, Marina. Bye, Natalie.
Thanks, Natalie. Take care.
If you enjoyed listening to our conversation, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe. We would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and write a short review.